Welcome to the Hormone Hub, your go-to source for the conversations every woman in her 40s and 50s needs to have. I'm your host, Kylie Pinwill, your nutritionist helping you navigate your way through perimenopause, menopause and beyond so you can say goodbye to the endless fatigue, unexplained weight gain, hot flushes, PMS, mood changes and more that come on this hormonal roller coaster. If you missed the memo or think this is only for women of a certain age, ladies, it's time to think again. Now sit back, relax and enjoy the show. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my latest episodes, which are released every week. Share it with your friends, your sweaty sisters. The more we talk, the more we help each other. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hormone Hub. It is great to have you here. I have bumped into a few more women during the week who also listen to the podcast, and this just gets me so excited every time because, the fact that you're listening, the fact that you're engaged and, you want to hear more. So nothing excites me more than hearing from, the listeners, which is great. So big thank you and very much appreciated. Okay, so let's jump in. In the last few episodes, I've been talking a lot about the importance of getting your blood sugar under control to, switch off that fat storage hormone. We've been talking about resetting your metabolism and also sort of shifting your mindset so you can then make some real changes that are going to stick. But I also understand that, a lot of this can be all words and you might be thinking, yeah, all right, but how does this apply to me? How do I get it to work for me? Will it work for me? I'm really busy. I don't have time. I don't have the money to invest, all of these things. So today's episode, I wanted to share a couple of client stories with you because I think it's important you see examples of what real success looks like so you can kind of ground yourself in the knowledge, knowing that it is possible for you too. My clients are, they're all beautiful women, but, they're all normal women, just like us. They are, busy, they're time poor, they're doing the juggle of, partners, families, work, businesses, busy jobs, in-laws, parents, the whole thing. And I just want you to know that if they can do it, you can absolutely do it too. And today I'm just going to show you, what some of their results have looked like and, how they've done it, and how you can do it too. All right. So let's jump in. So we'll start with Sally. So Sally is one of our Well Balanced Woman graduates. She came into the program and she thought she was eating fairly well. Look, and I've said this before, we all know what healthy eating looks like, right? So Sally, was doing a pretty good job. She had no energy. She was exhausted. She felt bloated. She felt puffy most of the time. She had, her little treats for those stress days. So Kit Kats was her thing. And that's not the end of the world, really. But the scales were working their way up. So she was having trouble sleeping. She struggled to get through the day at work, without wanting to have a nap. So, of course, she'd been to the doctor and, had all the tests done, and everything came back normal. Now, her blood sugar, interestingly enough, was slightly elevated, but she was told that she had nothing to worry about. We'll just wait and see. Now, I love this, we'll just wait and see. Like, really? What exactly are we waiting for? If one of your markers is outside the optimal range or outside the normal range, things don't get better on their own. So, it always sort of makes me sort of wonder what they're thinking when they say that, what we're waiting for it to be a diagnosed condition. Anyway, she was also told that she was too young for perimenopause. Even though she was in her late 40s, she ticked so many boxes, so many signs and symptoms that she was 100% in perimenopause. So, so Sally was trying to do her best. So except, come Friday, she's tired. It's the end of the week. It starts with takeout with the family and then, it kind of escalates from there. We all know what it's like. So then she would feel guilty and she would resolve to start over again on Monday. So, no wonder nothing she felt was working for her. So after we worked with Sally, she, was 10 kilos down. She felt more energized. She was sleeping better. She was enjoying life again. And she was actually eating more than she was before. And she wasn't having those weekend blowouts because she hadn't been feeling deprived of food all week. So how we did this with Sally is, we supported and we regulated that up and down blood sugar. We tweaked what she was already eating. So, so Sally was busy. She was juggling 2 kids, her own business, plus she was still working full time. So we had to make it easy for her. So we adjusted her family favorite meals, her midweek go-tos. And we also worked on changing her mindset. So she was able to get on top of those cravings and, reward herself with something other than food. And then this helped, she wasn't relying on willpower as well. So it was just really subtle shifts that we made, by changing the balance of food she was eating, by getting her to eat more food throughout the day, and then her energy levels picked up, her blood sugar was supported, she stopped storing fat and was able to lose it instead. So 10 kilos, she was pretty happy with that result. And, she's been out of the program for a couple of months now, so I wouldn't be surprised if she's continued and has lost a little bit more than that. Okay, so that's Sal. So the next client I would love to showcase is Nadina. So Nadina came into the program. She had been struggling for years with, weight gain, and she was also experiencing spiraling health conditions. So she had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. She also had been suffering from IBS for a number of years. And for as long as she could remember, she had really debilitating, painful menstrual cycles. So all of these conditions together are quite inflammatory. So the first thing we did with Nadina is we wanted to identify these, the foods and the products she was using that were potentially causing inflammation. So we did this using the food sensitivity test. So so things like toothpaste, deodorants, laundry powders, as well as fruits, veggies, proteins, things like that. So we identified, rather than taking out whole food groups, we identified exactly which foods weren't working for her, and we just took those out. So she was left with a big, long list of things she could eat. So then we wanted to make sure she was also eating enough of the right balance of foods to support her blood sugar and her hormones. So just like Sally, we got Nadina eating more food than she was before. And we started with breakfast. So she would have like 2 or 3 coffees in the morning before any foods hit her stomach. So what we did was we reined that in. She could still enjoy a coffee, but we needed to get some food into her body. So the wins with Nadina were amazing. And in a relatively short amount of time. So there was an enormous improvement in her pain and inflammation, to the point where, they actually wondered, because some of the symptoms of fibromyalgia do cross over into those perimenopause symptoms. So those inflammatory, achy joints, sore muscles, things like that. So, there is a big crossover with perimenopause. And it was interesting that her, doctor and Nadina as well sort of started to wonder, had she actually been misdiagnosed with the fibromyalgia in the beginning? But anyway, that's sort of an aside. But there was an enormous improvement in her pain and inflammation. Her IBS was completely resolved. So after years of either constipation or, diarrhea, running to the toilet, it was resolved. So she was now doing a normal bowel movement. She was doing, 1 to 2 a day, well-formed, easy to pass. There was no more urgency and no more constipation. So that was a really big one, was, supporting her digestive system. Her menstrual cycle was now a non-event. So we supported her hormones. We worked on, clearing those excess hormones by supporting her liver as well. So, her period would now just arrive. It wasn't painful, and she didn't need to take time off work. So she was having 2 to 3 days off work every single month due to that heavy flow, painful cramping, and all of that. We were able to sort of regulate her menstrual cycle. And, this didn't happen overnight. This happened over a period of 3 to 4 cycles. Okay. So it's not a, you do this and then your period is fixed. It does take a few cycles. And Nadina, we were lucky with her. She did respond really well to all of these things. So, and if you think your body doesn't get to this point overnight, so we're not going to fix it overnight, but we can make significant improvements in your quality of life. And then, one thing I did get because we'd been focusing on Nadina's health, and weight loss was one of her goals, but that wasn't our main focus. And she sent me a message to say that she had lost 34 centimeters off her body. So she was pretty happy with that. Now, if you'd like to hear more about Nadina's story, I actually have an interview that I did with her. So I'm going to pop the link to that interview in the show notes so you can actually, see and hear it from Nadina's words herself, because, it was a pretty amazing sort of health transformation that we did there. This Hormone Hub episode is sponsored by The Well Balanced Woman. If you've been on a hormonal roller coaster, feeling bloated, your digestion isn't the best, and you're sick and tired of feeling lethargic with your weight creeping up, then this is the right program for you. I'm right there with you across the 12 weeks to hold your hand, and I'll give you a loving kick up the bum if you need it. The Well Balanced Woman is your personalised 4-phase program created to help you regain your energy, balance your hormones and fire up your metabolism so you get the results you're after. The link with all the details is on our show notes or over at kyliepinwell.com/wellbalancedwoman. All right, so the next couple of clients I am going to showcase is, where we made sort of more mindset shifts, and that was our key focus. So with, lifestyle and mindset changes, it's always harder to measure. A 10 kilo weight loss, we can measure that. 34 kilos off your body, we can, measure that. Reduced time off work, we can measure that. But when it comes to those mindset shifts, it is a little bit harder. So I'm going to sort of highlight some of the changes that we see with our clients. So one of our beautiful ladies, Nadine, so she joined us when she started to experience anxiety for the first time. Now, she knew that it was 100% stress related. So she was working for the Department of Health, during the peak of the pandemic. And to the best of my knowledge, she is still there as well. So you can imagine it would have been a pretty hectic time. So she prioritized managing her stress. Obviously we couldn't change the situation, but we could change her reaction and also the way she could internally, make some changes. And at the end of the day, we can control our thoughts, we can control our actions, we can control our response, but we can't control what's going on outside of us. So if we if we think of putting ourselves in a bubble and controlling what goes on in our bubble. So Nadine got better at placing boundaries around her own self-care. Okay, so her own self-care is something that she could control. So things like, taking time off, having downtime, moving her body, resting her body, the way that self-chatter that we all do in our own heads. So she got really good at, putting those boundaries around, like they became a non-negotiable. She learnt the importance of prioritizing her own well-being, and she knew this, but she just wasn't doing it. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. A lot of us are guilty of that. And she learned to say no. So it started off, she started saying no at work, for things that were outside of her sort of role and outside of her control. She was one of those people pleasers, and people came to her to sort of like dump more things on her. So she learned to say no. And the result was she felt a lot calmer. She felt a lot more in control. Her anxiety was greatly reduced, knowing that she could control her own reaction, even if she couldn't change the situation that was going on. So that was, one example with Nadine. Now we've got Una. So Una was another beautiful lady we worked with, and again, just coincidentally during the pandemic, she hadn't been feeling happy with herself for a long time. She, came in the very first time that we spoke, she told me, she hated her body. And she was caught up in these negative thought patterns that were just looping around in her head. She was too fat, too old, nothing was going to work for her. She tried everything. So what we did with Una is, I asked her to trust me. I asked her to just trust the process and just surrender to the process and follow the steps. So what we did is we worked on her mindset. So we wanted to reduce that constant negative stress response. So we started with, how could she speak to herself differently? How could she be kinder to herself? And how could she focus on her own well-being rather than focusing on all the things that weren't working? Okay, so the result was she totally flipped it around. Okay, so she sent me a message and she found that, she was smiling more. She felt more relaxed. And what do you know? Her confidence grew. She was socializing more. She, felt better within her own skin. And then she was back shopping for clothes again, which is, something that she had previously enjoyed. So it wasn't that, she needed to lose weight. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with her. There was nothing wrong with her. It was the way that she'd been beating herself up for, for not being perfect, for not being, what she thought she needed to be. So it was really powerful to watch that mindset shift with Una. And then while we're talking about mindset, it's really important to, or it's vital to feel supported. Okay, so our, beautiful partners, they don't always understand what we're going through. We might or might not try and explain to them, but, they don't necessarily understand. Some of them try, God love them, but not all of them do. Our kids definitely do not understand, the shifts and the changes that we're going through. And, to be honest, a lot of our mothers seem to have amnesia or, they remember perimenopause and menopause with rose-coloured glasses. Oh, it wasn't that bad, I remember my mum saying when my kids were babies, she's going, oh, you guys just slept through the night. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we didn't. And Dad's like, you never slept. So it was funny that, Mum has these rose-coloured glasses that she remembers everything through. And I think the same is, comes to menopause. They didn't talk about it. So they remember it very differently. So with one of our ladies, Maria, she came in with so much self-judgment. And when she realised that she actually wasn't the only one going through this, it was sort of like a light bulb moment for her. So she didn't have any friends going through it at the time. Work colleagues were younger, and she felt like she was going crazy. So when she came in, to our beautiful community of women, she realised that, hang on a second, I'm not going mad. And the beautiful thing with Maria is she had never put us into her sort of framework before. She'd, always sort of been, as so many of us who grew up through the 80s and 90s, it was all about, diet and exercise. We had to feel deprived. We had to, flog ourselves with exercise, go harder or go home, that kind of thing. So what we did with Maria is we worked on, being okay with not being perfect. It was okay to let that go and, and know that it's normal to have ups and downs, to have good days, bad days, and that self-awareness that she found, and also being more mindful of, how she was feeling and giving herself some slack was huge for her. So you can see here that, the changes aren't necessarily all measurable, and it's not all about diet and exercise. So the key thing to remember is it is possible for you to make small changes, and these small changes have significant impacts to your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So I hope you can sort of see that change is possible for you too. These women that I've sort of highlighted today, they are normal, regular women, just like us, who decided that they'd had enough and they didn't want to live their life on the sidelines anymore. And it's okay to not know what to do. If you have, what you've been doing hasn't worked or things are getting worse, it's just that your 40, 50 plus year old body responds very differently to our 20 and 30-year-old body. And, I can help you make these simple shifts that are going to have a big impact for you. And I'm there to support you in making these changes work in your already busy life. So if you've been thinking about joining me in the Well Balanced Woman, then take this as a sign. Why keep stalling? It's time to put yourself first and enjoy the body that you are living in because, my love, you are worth it. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. You can head on over to the show notes at kyliepinwell.com/podcast where you'll find all the links and I have a little bonus surprise waiting for you. Before we go, it would mean the world to me if you head on over to your favourite podcasts channel, subscribe and leave a review. Make sure to screenshot it, DM it to me so I can thank you personally. Then stay tuned for next week's episode. Can't wait to see you then.